Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya from Rajratna Ambedkar, and welcome to the third episode of the Buddha and his Dhamma. In this episode, we will see Siddhartha's childhood and education and his early traits. So, let's move forward towards Siddhartha's childhood and education. When Siddhartha was able to walk and speak, the elders of the Sakyas assembled and asked Shuddhodhana that the boy should be taken to the temple of the village goddess Abhaya. Shuddhodhana agreed and asked Mahaprajapati to dress the boy. While she was doing so, the child Siddhartha, with most sweet voice, asked his aunt where he was being taken. On learning that he was being taken to the temple, he smiled. But he went conforming to the custom of the Shakyas. At the age of 8, Siddhartha started his education. Those very 8 Brahmins whom Shuddhodhana had invited to interpret Mahamaya's dream and who had predicted his future were his first teachers. After they had taught him what they knew, Shuddhodhana sent for Sabbamita of distinguished descent and of high lineage in the land of Uddika, a philologist and grammarian, well read in the Vedas, Vedangas and Upanishads. Having poured out water of dedication from a golden vase, Shuddhodhana handed over the boy to his charge. To be taught, he was his second teacher. Under him, Gautama mastered all the philosophic systems prevalent in his day. Besides this, he had learned the science of concentration and meditation from one Bharadwaj, a disciple of Alar Kalam, who had his ashram at Kapilvastu. Siddhartha's early traits. Whenever he went to his father's farm and found no work, he repaired to a quiet place and practiced meditation. While everything for the cultivation of mind was provided, his education in the military science befitting a Kshatriya was not neglected. For Shuddhodhana was anxious not to make the mistake of having cultivated the mind of his son at the cost of his manliness. Siddhartha was of kindly disposition. He did not like exploitation of a man by man. Once he went to his father's farm with some of his friends and saw the laborers ploughing the land, raising burns, cutting trees, etc., dressed in scanty clothes under a hot burning sun. He was greatly moved by the sight. He said to his friends, "Can it be right that one man should exploit another? How can it be right that the laborer should toil and the master should live on the fruits of his labor?" His friend did not know what to say, for they believed in the old philosophy of the life that the workers was born to serve and that in serving his master he was only fulfilling his destiny. The Shakyas used to celebrate a festival called Vapramangal. It was a rustic festival performed on the day of sowing. On this day, custom had made it obligatory to every Shakya to do plugging personally. Siddhartha always observed the custom and did engage himself in plugging. Though a man of learning, he did not despise manual labor. He belonged to a warrior class and had been taught archery and the use of weapons, but he did not like causing unnecessary injury. He refused to join hunting parties. His friends used to say, "Are you afraid of tigers?" He used to retort by saying, "I know you are not going to kill tigers. You are going to kill harmless animals such as deer and rabbits. If not for hunting, come to witness how accurate is the aim of your friends," they said. Even such invitations Siddhartha refused, saying, "I do not like to see the killing of innocent animals." Prajapati Gautami was deeply worried over this attitude of Siddhartha. She used to argue with him, saying, "You have forgotten that you are a Kshatriya and fighting is your duty. The art of fighting can be learned only through hunting, for only by hunting you can learn how to aim accurately. Hunting is a training ground for the warrior class." Siddhartha often used to ask Gautami, "But mother, why should a Kshatriya fight?" And Gautami used to reply, "Because it is his duty." Siddhartha was never satisfied by her answer. He used to ask Gautami, "Tell me, how can it be the duty of a man to kill man?" Gautami argued, "Such an attitude is good for an ascetic. But Kshatriyas must fight. If they don't, who will protect the kingdom?" "But mother, if all Kshatriyas loved one another, would they not be able to protect the kingdom without resort to killing?" Gautami had to leave him to his own opinion. He tried to induce his companions to join him in practicing meditation. He taught them the proper pose. He taught them to fix their mind on a subject. He advised them to select such thoughts as, "May I be happy, may my relations be happy, may all living animals be happy." But his friends did not take the matter seriously. They laughed at him. On closing their eyes, they could not concentrate on their subject of meditation. Instead, some saw before their eyes deer for shooting or sweets for eating. His father and his mother did not like his partiality for meditation. They thought it was so contrary to the life of a Kshatriya. Siddhartha believed that meditation on right subjects led to development of the spirit of universal love. He justified himself by saying, "When we think of living things, we begin with distinction and discrimination. We separate friends from enemies. We separate animals we rear from human beings. We love friends and domesticated animals, and we hate enemies and wild animals. This dividing line we must overcome, and this we can do when we in our contemplation rise above the limitations of practical life." Such was his reasoning. His childhood was marked by the presence of supreme sense of compassion. Once he went to his father's farm. During recess, he was resting under a tree, enjoying the peace and beauty of nature. While so seated, a bird fell from the sky just in front of him. The bird had been shot at by an arrow which had pierced its body and was fluttering about in great agony. Siddhartha rushed to the help of the bird. He removed the arrow, dressed its wound, and gave water to drink. He picked up the bird, came to the place where he was seated, and wrapped up the bird in the upper garment and held it next to his chest to give it warmth. Siddhartha was wondering who could have shot this innocent bird. Before long, there came his cousin Devdatta, armed with all the implements of shooting. He told Siddhartha that he had shot a bird flying in the sky. The bird was wounded, but it flew some distance and fell somewhere there, and asked him if he had seen it. Siddhartha replied in the affirmative and showed him the bird, which had by that time completely recovered. Devdatta demanded that the bird be handed over to him. This Siddhartha refused to do. A sharp argument ensued between the two. Devdatta argued that he was the owner of the bird because by the rules of the game, he who kills a game becomes the owner of the game. Siddhartha denied the validity of the rule. He argued that it is only he who protects that has the right to claim ownership. How can he who wants to kill be the owner? Neither party would yield. The matter was referred to arbitration. The arbitrator upheld the point of view of Siddhartha Gautama. Devadatta became his permanent enemy, but Gautama's spirit of compassion was so great that he preferred to save the life of an innocent bird to securing the goodwill of his cousin. Such were the traits of character found in early life of Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha's marriage. There was a Shakya by name Dandapani. Yashodhara was his daughter. She was well known for her beauty and for her shield. Yashodhara had reached her 16th year and Dandapani was thinking about her marriage. According to custom, Dandapani sent invitations to young men of all the neighboring countries for the Swayamvar of his daughter. An invitation was also sent to Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha Gautama had completed his 16th year. His parents also were equally anxious to get him married. They asked him to go to the Swayamvar and offer his hand to Yashodhara. He agreed to follow his parents' wishes. For amongst the young men, Yashodhara's choice fell on Siddhartha Gautama. Dandapani was not very happy. He felt doubtful about the success of the marriage. Siddhartha, he felt, was addicted to the company of saints and sages. He preferred loneliness. How could he be a successful householder? Yashodhara, who was determined to marry none but Siddhartha, asked her father whether to be in the company of saints and sages was a crime. She did not think it was. Knowing her daughter's determination to marry no one but Siddhartha Gautama, the mother of Yashodhara told Dandapani that he must consent. Dandapani did. The rivals of Gautama were not only disappointed but felt that they were insulted. They wanted that in fairness to them, Yashodhara should have applied some test for her selection. But she did not. For the time being, they kept quiet, believing that Dandapani would not allow Yashodhara to choose Siddhartha Gautama so that their purpose would be served. But when Dandapani failed, they made bold and demanded that a test of skill in archery be prescribed. Dandapani had to agree. At first, Siddhartha was not prepared for this, but Channa, his charioteer, pointed out to him what disgrace his refusal would bring upon his father, upon his family, and upon Yashodhara. Siddhartha Gautama was greatly impressed by this argument and agreed to take part in the contest. The contest began. Each candidate showed his skill in turn. Gautama's turn came last, but his was the highest marksmanship. Thereafter, the marriage took place. Both Shuddhodana and Dandapani were happy. So was Yashodhara and Mahaprajapati. After a long time of married life, Yashodhara gave birth to a son. He was named Rahul. So this was the third episode of the Buddha and his Dhamma. Stay tuned for the next part. Thank you for listening. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya.